Hi, my name is Larissa Oliveri, or a Mindful Clothier, and welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I am telling you the story of this beautiful coat that I made using the Vogue Paris original pattern from 1959-1960, designed by Antonio Castillo for the house of Lanvin, worn by the legendary Dovima that you see in this picture. All of these names may not mean much to you, but I'm here to tell the story, and I would love to share that with you. So, as usual, follow along. I came across this coat while browsing Etsy, and something about it immediately spoke to me. At the time, I didn't know who Antonio Castillo was or the story behind the woman in the cover. The curiosity made me want to learn more, and eventually it led me to making the coat and bringing their stories to life. The pattern is a careful reproduction of the original. It came with a copy of the original instructions and pattern pieces printed on heavy paper with all the markings. I chose a tweed wool fabric that I had in my stash for years, if not decades. It was very inexpensive and I wasn't afraid to cut into it. I wanted to test the pattern, and if I loved it, I could make it again in a more luxurious fabric. So, Antonio Cánovas del Castillo was born in 1908 in Madrid, and he began his Paris fashion career in the mid to late 40s. First, he designed for Paquin and Piquet and even made jewelry for Chanel, if you can believe it. He got noticed by Elizabeth Arden, and she invited him to New York in 1945. While in New York, he also was a costume designer for the Metropolitan Opera House on Broadway and had a lot of success doing that work. In 1950, he joined the house of Lanvin back in Paris at the invitation of Jean Lanvin's daughter, and he became the creative director and a caretaker of the brand for the next 13 years. Oddly, the Maison Lanvin rarely acknowledges his influence today. I didn't see it on their website, which feels a bit unfair. I like the word caretaker, as an old Vogue article called him. Without Antonio Castillo, who carefully preserved Lanvin's legacy, the house of Lanvin may not have been what it is today. I don't know, you be the judge. There are 11 pattern pieces. This coat, nothing too complicated, but quite interesting details that I will tell you about that I'm specifically in love with. So, the patterns, the pattern pieces have all been cut out of fashion fabric, and I chose, because of the fabric I selected for this project, I chose to interline every piece. The pattern calls for interlining and interfacing certain pieces here and there for stability, but I chose to interline all the major pieces, like this front, for example, to give it a bit more structure. A bit more warmth, because my coat, I intended it to be for more the winter or late fall season, and so I chose to do it. And I just really like interlining things to give it more stability and shape and preserve the fabric better. I have 100% nice wool. For my interlining, I chose a beautiful 100% linen. I obviously prepared the fabric for using it as an interlining. I washed it and I dried it, and then I steam ironed it. So cut the same pieces using the pattern, the project pattern pieces, cut the same from interlining, laid them on top of the fashion fabric, and attached them lightly with running stitch all around the perimeter, as well as used the thread to trace all of the important information that I need to be able to construct the garment, right? As the placement of the slits for the belt, loops, additional things where, the pockets and the belts for the pockets are going to go, and so on and so forth. Nothing new. So again, two pieces I have here of the front. The fronts have the facings, the self facings that will create the beautiful lapel. Everything is a bit kind of oversized and exaggerated, which I like. I think it's trendy, but also is beautiful. And I don't like what trendy is, but it is trendy now, but I think it's classic. It's completely feminine. It's the bit of a juxtaposition of the feminine and masculine element of having something oversized, right? Elegantly shaped, but made out of kind of menswear fabric. So I like mixing and matching those elements. So anyway, there are two fronts. Everything is complete, already ready to be assembled, right? Prepared, cut out, interfaced, all markings transferred. There are two pieces of the back. The back has a pretty wide pleat, center pleat that starts from about like your waistline right here, right? And I chose to interline only half of it to the center seam because of that pleat. You know, when the fabric comes together and lays on top, one layer on top of the other, it creates thickness and it runs all the way from the neckline to the bottom, to the hem, right in the center line. So I didn't think this was necessary to add any bulk or warmth or stability. I just left it as is. But I did interlining halfway, as you can see here. I transferred all the markings, obviously, and I made sure that I attach it in place, secured it in place so it didn't move as I would wear and care for the garment later. Now I did make some alterations, so simple but necessary in my case, and my alterations usually consist of adding a little bit length to the bodice because I'm tall and usually my waistline is a bit lower, on average 3/4 of an inch, so I made sure that the slits for the belt that will pass through, that the belt will pass through, are positioned correctly. So I didn't have to like tie my belt a bit too high for me, so I made sure that everything lays flat. So I did that in the front and the back pieces and made sure everything is in place. So there are two pieces of the back. And then I also ordered my sleeves. In the pattern, the coat has this beautiful 7/8 length, and I love it. But I think more for the modern day wear and for the season, I prefer to have the full length of the sleeve. I hope it does not change the balance in the coat. We'll see how this works, but I obviously just extended the sleeve. I cut the pattern where it needed to be, added necessary length, and created a full end. Obviously there is a hem allowance for the sleeve to make sure that it could be finished beautifully. I do have an idea, and I don't know if I should or I shouldn't do it. I always like to complicate things a little bit, right? But I thought that if I added a little belt on the sleeve, at the bottom of the sleeve, and created those slits to pass through for the belt, as a pass through for the belt, not quite as wide as at the waistline, but maybe an inch and a half, like half of the width, or 2 inches, something like that, so it would create a dramatic finish. And I thought of that simply because I did extend it by about this much, right? So it's quite a significant add, and just to have it plain felt like I'm finished a little, because she wears this with like gloves and some bracelet, because like it's a bracelet sort of length of a sleeve, and so she would have something around the wrist on top of the glove, things like that, as it's photographed here. But without that, I thought it might be a nice touch, but we'll see how it looks. I will assemble it first and then kind of pin the sleeve, put it on, and see if it's really missing it. But if it creates a bit too much busyness, I might choose not to do it, because it will be lower but not far from where the belt is going to be, and all those loops, we'll see. Anyway, the nice surprise was the collar. Again, I didn't mention that, but as you probably saw, I interlined the sleeves fully and completely. Again, same linen fabric. I like a little bit of a heavy and sturdy feel of it. The collar was a little bit of a surprise. I saw it, but I do like, once I cut it out and started assembling, these are pinned. I will sew them. I probably will just take them to the machine and sew. These are multiple darts on both sides of both ends, I should say, of the collar, the one that attaches to the inner side, inner collar, and the outer collar, right? It's cut on a fold as one piece. So they create this beautiful kind of fanned out, beautiful fullness that will lay nicely and will sit a little bit high on the shoulders, so it gives it a bit of a high definition and raise. And so then the collar will lay here and attach to the self-facing, to the lapel that cut on with the front piece. I like it. It's unique. It just creates dimension. It's not like a traditional collar per se. I have seen those before, and I think they were quite popular. That shape of it, I think it really complements kind of the bulkiness of the coat overall, because it is a more of a straight design, but with a beautifully cinched waist, which is also a brilliant detail I would like to point out. Because if you think that if you have a belt for a pretty wide coat, even if it is fitted slightly, right, if you put the belt over a heavy coat and try to kind of tie it, right, so all this bulkiness, right, is right underneath the belt. It's quite difficult, but if you pass the belt through those slits and the loops, it cinches it at the waist and avoids that, and it creates the beautifully, elegantly shaped silhouette without this bulkiness kind of fanning out and creating your waistline, expanding your waistline that we don't like. So I like that. I'll see how it performs. I also did another thing that I want to show you. I practiced to create those slits for the belt. They are classic, typical belts from my understanding, right? So I tried them both ways, just simply creating them. You put them on top of the fashion fabric. Then you would secure them. Ideally, you can pin them essentially in place, but best I would simply baste them in place on the placing line, on the line where you're going to be slashing in, and then stitch around them very, very close to the slashing line, to the cutting line, and then turn them from the front to the inside and press. So that's one version of it, and I like it. It's a little bit sort of kind of bulky but neat. I went a little bit on the second attempt. I went a little bit closer in, and I made a much more narrow slit that way, and then pressed it and then top stitched it. And my fabric allows for top stitching being practically invisible. It's got a little bit of this grayish and black and variations on gray, 50 shades of gray, kind of and has texture and the color variations that makes the stitch pretty practically invisible. But even if it was visible, I don't think this would be a bad feature to have. This might seem like a pretty wide gap here, but no, don't forget that there will be a pretty wide belt that will go in of the same width. And I have the patterns, the belt actually pieces cut out. It's one piece on a fold. I might interface it a little bit, but I don't want to glue anything like we do in modern day and age. I tried not to use any chemicals here, so I probably will just use a little bit of silk organza. I have always remnants of that, just to create a bit of stability, because I feel like if you're going to be tying it all the time, it might go out of shape, and we don't want this to happen. But this is it so far, so keep it posted. And again, I have a deadline. I'm going to London in a few days. Today is November 22nd, and so my trip starts on December 2nd, and I only have a few days right before Thanksgiving to finish it off. But the idea is to complete the code, take it with me to London, photograph it there, bring it back and show it to you. While you see me try the code for the first time, let me tell you the story of Dovime, the woman who graces the image on the cover of this pattern. Dovime's story feels impossible to believe. You might not know her name, but you do know her image. It's a woman in the floor-length black gown standing gracefully among circus elephants. This is the Yves Saint Laurent gown for Dior, photographed by Richard Avedon in 1955. This is Dovime. She was born Dorothy Virginia Margaret Juba in Queens, New York in 1927. As a child, illness confined her to her home. Rheumatic fever kept her inside, and in that solitude she created an imaginary friend, Dovime, and that's how we know her as a model. Discovered by chance on the streets of New York, she stepped in front of the camera and the world fell silent. Her elegance seemed effortless, innate, as if she had been born with it. She never smiled in photographs, giving her a quiet mystery. The truth was she had a chipped tooth and a shyness she wished to hide. Her life off the runway was far from the spotlight. Abusive marriages, lost financial control, even the heartbreak of losing custody of her only daughter. At 35, she left modeling, only to find herself broke, uprooted, and having to move with her parents in Florida and working in a restaurant, away from the camera she had once commanded. And yet she endured. In her later years, she found love, peace, and the quiet beauty of a simple life. Dovime was a muse, a dream, a desire, but above all, she was a woman, vulnerable, fragile, trusting, painfully insecure, and endlessly radiant. She remains one of the most iconic models of all time, a reminder that the true beauty is not just in grace or poise, but in strength, humanity, and resilience. It's assembled. It's a full double-breasted coat, as you know, so the slits go all the way through the bag. Gorgeous, by the way, absolutely. Did I tell you how much I love this? So, and then it ties like so on one side, like so. What else did I do? The collar, absolutely my favorite. As you recall, it has this a fan of darts on both the inner collar and outer collar, and what it does, as I was hoping it would, creates the elevation and the standing and fanning effect. I love this. You can wear it in many different ways as you would like, because it is a pretty large collar. Right, but I do like when it falls on the shoulders and it actually covers the shoulders, so super, super nice. There have been quite a few alterations. This design came, or the pattern that I had was a size larger. Hopefully my mic works. Was a size larger, and on top of that, it being an oversized design, that it was super large on me, and really the bulkiness of it didn't feel right. So I had to take quite a bit in. So what I did is I took some bulk out in the seam in the back. So I had to just reposition all of the center lines and the pleats and everything. So that took a little bit, maybe like an inch in the back, and then I took at least an inch on each of the sides. And then with that, I had to reshape the armholes a little bit and the top of the sleeve, at the head of the sleeve, so it did fit me better, my shoulders. So it's perfect now. I will use the smaller, not very thick shoulder pads, because I do like a little bit elevation and support for the shoulders. Those are not very thick, and I might take some bulk out, but I do think it would benefit from a little bit support and elevation, and me having slightly square shoulders. What else do I like? I really do like the pleat, actually. I have to tell you, what it reminds me of is the military officers' coats or overcoats. I remember one that my grandfather had. He was in the wars. I remember him keeping that overcoat. The word is chinelle in my language. I don't know if it's French as well, but this is the word. But an overcoat made out of very heavy woolen material, almost like felted, but really, really heavy in quality, keeps him warm in the wintertime. And the very deep pleat in the back that really starts at the waistline practically allows for the ability to make long steps and to march. I like this effect, and I love that there is this juxtaposition again of a feminine element of like an elegant coat, but with the masculine elements like the oversized effect of it, like the pleat and things like that. So this is it. The next thing that needs to happen would be the pockets. They will come here on the sides, a little bit towards the front, but these are welt pockets, and I do have the welts already prepared, so I will be putting the pocket, if I can find that somewhere, right here. The pockets will be made out of linen as well. You won't see them, obviously, so I can use that. And then you will attach them like so, sew through them, slit to the slit. They put them on one side, right, like so, and then on top of the opening there will be a beautiful welt, like so. So you could put your hand through it inside the pocket on both sides. Again, I would have to still see if these need to be repositioned a little bit because of the alterations I introduced into the design. That would be it. Then I will be creating buttonholes before I put the lining in, because again, why not complicate things a little bit, as we say, we like it, but make it a bit more sophisticated. I would like to do the bound buttonholes using the same fabric. I think they will look much more elegant. And I have really large, 4 large buttons, leather buttons that I ordered from my favorite store in the whole world of fabrics, Mood store in New York. they come in different sizes, so I've used them before in different garments and overcoats, and so I ordered the black leather buttons, flat buttons with 4 holes in them. So, and then the hemming, I will probably shorten that a little bit based on how I like the feel. The sleeves I left long, although when I did try it on, I loved how the 7/8 effect and the balance it created. Sort of the accentuated the elegance of the collar. Strange how it works, but it did. It just made perfect sense when I made it shorter. But I think for practical purposes, I will leave it long, but I will see if there's anything that I need to do to make it a bit prettier. That's pretty much it. But stay tuned. The lining here is already prepared. I mentioned that it's a beautiful silk, not silk charmeuse, but like heavyweight silk that has a really super interesting design, and the beautiful center design will be in the center of the back, and so the sides are also cut out from the same fabric. What I didn't have enough of that fabric for is to cut out the sleeve lining fully, but I left the lining the bottom cut out of the same fabric, so when you lift your arm and if the lining shows, it will show the same lining, but then I cut the rest out of the beautiful silk charmeuse that I had leftovers of. I think that will be perfectly appropriate. Again, silks are expensive materials and not particularly sustainably made, so if you do have silks, then you should be very respectful using them, and every little bit should be used. I think this is pretty much it. I did go to London. I didn't get a chance to wear this and demonstrate it and show it to you, but I did go to London, and I did visited this exhibit by Gabrielle Chanel, the Fashion Manifesto. There's probably a lot on internet about that exhibition, but I didn't deliberately read anything about it because I wanted to create my own impression and wanted to see how it makes me feel looking at her designs. I think it's very important to always look at any creation, whether it's modern fashion or historical fashion. It's not only the visual effect, the beauty of the garment, but really important to understand where it's made, how it's made, what were the hands behind it. And it's important for me as a seamstress, I do this out of love, and I could buy a coat, but I want to understand what it takes to make a coat, right? And how many hours, how much effort it goes, because it does make me appreciate a finished product so much more, and I want to care for it more. I want to wear it better. I want to share it with someone. This is a connection. It's almost like a personal connection and relationship with the garment. And I think this is our problem of today, that we lost touch with what we have hanging in our closets, and we're not thinking about this at all. And that creates a problem in the world where we buy more and more and more without thinking much, without really building our own style, without building our closets responsibly and mindfully. So this is what I am passionate about, and I'm going to continue talking about this. So stay tuned for next update. Hopefully next time I'll wear it.